All right, so tonight, like I said, we've made our models, the starting point. Now let's figure out how to get them from the computer to the printers. So first thing is we have to get your prepped model out of Fusion. So I'm going to go over to Fusion, and let's bring up our example model here. We'll go with a simple lay ducky. Now, right now it's in a color mode. Color is irrelevant at this stage, so I'll just press Shift in, Shift November, go back to auto color mode. I'll hide the sketches just so I'm seeing just my object. Make sure that everything is a single body. If it is not, and currently that one is, and that one is, there we go. Something is kicking back and forth on this computer. There we go. It's a single body. If it's not, you cannot have multiple things, because even if they are nested together, the program we're going to use, the Slicer program, which is an intermediary between Fusion and the printers, will read it as two separate things and might not blend them properly. So join them in your program. Remember, to do that, you go to the Combine tool. You'll select the tool body, select the target body and the tool bodies, and hit OK, just so long as it's on the join. But this already is, so we don't need to. All right. I do find it helpful to rename your body at the moment. So we'll say duck coin, because it's more coin than keychain at the moment. The reason for this is here we're going to go to File. Now, there are two things on here. There is export and there's 3D print. Technically, Fusion 360 actually has a slicer program built into it. But because we are using these PRUSA PRUSA printers, we're going to use the dedicated program for that. So to get it out of Fusion 360, we go to export, just like we did if you were trying to get this to transfer between teams. Only instead, this time, I'm going to hit export. Oh, sorry, not export. I'm confusing myself by saying that. We're going to use 3D print. I apologize. I got myself cross-wired there. We are going to use 3D print, but when this toolbox comes up, operation what? There we go. Oh, great. There's new options. I didn't know that. Keep it in print utility if that toolbox pops up for you. That's new for me. I didn't know that was a thing. Oh, okay. So you can actually go right to PRUSA. That's interesting. Sorry, news to me. I didn't know this was part of a new update. I didn't catch this. All right, so let's select that and see where it takes us. The other one is preform, which is for the form printers. All right, I'll have to experiment with that. Sorry. Format, you can leave it in the default 3MF, or just to keep it a little more simple, we can switch to STL. But you know what? To let go with fewer details or fewer options, let's just keep it as the default 3MF. What we discussed last time, the different file types, this is the newest, more unifying file type, so it works on all the things. So we'll just leave it as that. If you want, you can select preview. All that's going to do is give you this preview mesh. That's super confusing, so let's not worry about it. Like I said, it's an option. Don't worry about it. Hit OK. All right, cool. So this is going to kick it right out. But that's if you already have this installed on your computer. So, yep. I can cancel that. So in order to get Slicer on your program or on your computer, sorry, where'd my toolbox go? There we are. Sorry, jumping around between screens. Where is, okay. Going to the internets, PRUSA3D.com. It's going to bring you to just the main page. What we're going to go to is software and the PRUSA Slicer. Now, if you have a Mac, obviously use Mac. If you have Windows, use Windows. You don't have to install these on your laptops. We have these installed on the desktops in the room, so if you don't want to add one more program, you do not have to. But go through the steps, download it, install. Don't worry about firmware, drivers, anything like that. It's not what you need. But ultimately, you install that if you wish, or you can just use one of our computers that already has it set up. And you come to here. And let me just change over my screen. Apologies. There we are. Okay. Now, this is after going through the setup wizard. In order to do that, basically what you're going to do is you're going to go at, I'm just going to take it a quick run through what it will happen when you initially install this program. I already have this all set up, but I'm going to take you through real quick how to do this. Don't have to worry about user profiles and anything like that. Don't have to worry about logins. Just going to go through next. Nope, don't want to log in. Don't need that. All right. What printers are we configuring? Just the PRUSA FFF. Yes, I know that we discussed that technically we're not using fused filament fabrication. This is technically a FDM, fused deposition modeling, but this is what they're calling it, so we'll go with that. Just the one. You can actually set it up for other ones, but we're just gonna leave it at that. All right. Holy crap, there's a whole bunch of these. No, the ones we have, and it'll say it on the printer, but the ones we have are PRUSA Mark III. And just the very first one with this 0.04 millimeter nozzle. That's the only one we have. Both of those are set up exactly the same. That's the only one. Do not select anything else, any of the others. That's the only one. I will write it up here. I will put this in the notes on this video. Next, don't need to worry about this. This is asking for materials. All we really have is, and we haven't discussed this stuff yet, but PLA and PETG. The two top ones here, you can leave the default selections there. That's okay. Yes.
Sorry, what printer?
The PRUSA Mark III with just the 0.4 millimeter nozzle. So you can leave all of these as defaults. That's okay. That's plenty. You can always go back and add stuff later if you want. Neato burrito. Next. Yep. Those are automatic updates. Doesn't matter. Next. If you want to do the built-in downloader, more power to you. Don't need to worry about that. One second. Don't need to worry about that. You can select these. It's automatically going to associate the 3MF files that we just used, as well as the STL file. That's fine. Super. Select those. If you want the default, usually simple mode, that's okay. Doesn't matter. Whatever you feel like. From there, yep, finish. So what you'll end up with is a virtual environment of those printer beds. Meaning that when I put something over onto here, it's going to look like it is on there to the scale it is. I think, as I recall, each of these larger squares are 10 centimeters. So you can get a pretty solid reference of what you're working on right there. You can tumble this around by left clicking on the board, orbiting it around. Zoom in and out with the wheel. Right click, click and hold, pan. So yeah, great. More controls to learn. All right, so if you've done that, you were not able to download directly, if you just exported it into your file onto the computer, which mine usually goes directly to downloads, but in this case, because of that new option, it did not. So we'll work around that. What it did do is automatically kicked it out to PRUSA Slicer. So this is already set. It already slaps it down. Now, a couple things about this. You can still, if we accidentally made this the wrong size, you can scale this. Once you select your object, you have a bunch of different options over here on the left. You can move it around, which by default, you can just click and drag it around. If you go out of bounds, it's going to highlight it and you'll get an error. If you want to just automatically snap it wherever it seems best, at the top, the align button or arrange snaps it back, usually smack in the middle. You still have a scale option. If you decide, oh, I actually did make it way too teeny or way too big, scale it appropriately. You can rotate these, try to do this manually, meaning trying to get it just so, that sort of thing. Sometimes it makes more sense to print something at an angle, not this time. However, what if your model comes in at an angle or you built yours accidentally like up on the edge or something like that? So when you import it, it's showing like this. Not a problem. Do not try to manually get it just flat on the print bed. You're never going to get it, and it's just not going to print right, or it's going to be a pain to print. Luckily, they've built in on this. The next option is print place on face. So you select that. So after you've selected the object, you select the place on face, and you'll get these little highlights. Find the biggest flat one, click there, and it slaps it straight down onto that. Super helpful for orienting into your models. We're not going to worry about the other ones right here just now because we're not really going to get to any of this right now. But there is also a measure option if you want to see just how big this actually is instead of just, yeah, I know it says it's so and so many millimeters, but how big is that actually? You can select stuff like that, and it'll give you some dimensions. But that's pretty much it. All right, neato. We've got this set. Still like to make it go to those printers now, please. All right, so you got a couple of options. First, you have your details, or rather how detailed the print will be. The main options usually are detail somewhere between 0.1 or 0.15. These are how high the steps are between each layer. So if it's fine, it's only going to move a teeny tiny bit. If it's going to be more of a draft quality, it's going to move a little bit more. You saw the little test benchies before? Those were all printed on draft quality. So you can get quite a lot of detail even at draft. So I would recommend leaving it at draft for now. 0.3. That's the quickest print. Then we're going to select what material we need. You can just use generic PET or PLA. The trick to that is just looking at what material you want to use. So what you need to do with these is before you go here, decide what kind of material you want to print these in. We'll look at those options, gesundheit. But we'll just say leave it as default generic PLA. Yep, still printing on the only printer we have selected, so good. Now none of you or these, and instead they came out as ye. None of ye need thee. None of you should need supports right now for this project. That is something we'll discuss in the next one. Infill. Infill is the webbing inside the structure, because basically these print as the shell, as the outermost layer, and you get to decide how dense from hollow to solid this would print. Do not print these solid. Usually 15% is pretty good. 10% is also good. Somewhere in there, it's a good enough amount of webbing, and I'll show you what happens for that. From there, you're all set. Select slice now. The color in here is irrelevant because we're choosing by the color of the actual material. Now it's going to look all funky here, but what it is it's giving us a legend over here. And when I zoom in, you're actually getting a visual representation of the passes of the printer head. So this little slider here goes from full to small, or sorry, top to bottom. That makes more sense. As I scroll down, it's going to cut through the layers, and you will see that is the infill. This grid inside, that's the webbing inside. But you can adjust these. So these are your main features here. These are your main controls, but you can play with this. Why would you want to play with that? One, maybe you like it looks a little bit nicer, or it's a little bit stronger technically, or it can go a little faster. So right now, this is giving me an estimated time. 52 minutes. It's not because it's using that much material, it just takes a little bit. All right, so let's try what happens with 5% infill. You do need infill. You have to have something. So let's reslice that. Ooh, it shaved a whole 1 minute off of there. All right, let's try something else. So the default is a grid web inside. So what you can do is you can go to the print settings. If you don't see all these options up here, it's because it's in the simple mode. On the right-hand corner, above all these other options, there's expert mode. You can go to beginner mode, and you might not see these directly, but we'll go to switch to print settings. And the only other one you really need to worry about is the one that says infill, that's highlighted in yellow or orange. Fill density, yeah, we already had it at 5%. You can select something else from here. I really like using gyroid. I always forget how that's pronounced. Gyroid? Sure. Let's select that one because instead of squares, rectangles, waffle style, it's more of a weave inside. So let's go back to plater. Come on. Go away thingy. Slice now. All right, that didn't change it at all. But when I cut through here, you can see the different pattern. That instead of a grid, it's this wavy line thing. For this project, it's not really going to save a lot of time, but just know that excuse me, are options. And you can even play around with the actual face settings. So if I go back to print, let's go to layers and perimeters, or um, nah, it's infill. Okay. So you can play around with these settings too. These monotonic lines are just back and forth filling. But let's say, what does it look like with concentric? Go back to planar. Now you can see that it fills from the outside inward the whole way through. Sometimes it looks better. Sometimes it gets kind of funkier designs. That happens. But one of the other things it's going to show you, I'm going to go back to the default. There we are. But one of the other things it's going to show you, those of you with text on here. If you use too fine a text or too small of a font, when you get to this stage, it might suddenly your details or your text might not be showing up. If that happens, that is showing you that you either need to make the text larger or pick like a boldface font or something, or just try bold. Because ultimately what that means is the lines either of details of your design or of your text is smaller than the width of the nozzle. Meaning ultimately it's smaller than with the filament, 1.75 millimeters thickness. So means it's too small to show up, so it doesn't even bother rendering it. If that happens, if you go to hit export, or if you go to hit slice and suddenly your thing disappears, whatever detail is, that just means you need to go back into Fusion, adjust the size or font or boldface of the of your font, or sorry, of your text, and adjust it from there. That's it. All right. Blah, 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 blah. We've gotten through all the options. Export. Just export G code. G code is the coding that is basically translating your object into all the little slices of layers and telling those printers how to go about it. Export G code. This is just going to go to, I'm going to set it as download. And the good thing, or my downloads, and the good thing is it will also give you a reminder of all the features that are required. So meaning that, all right, this is set for the draft thickness, 0.3 millimeters. It's going to remind you what material it is, because say you load it onto here, you go over to the printer and you forget what it is, it's going to show you what material you need to use for this file. You cannot print PET with one that's set for PLA. The reason for these are all things like the heat. PETG is a hotter material, requires hotter material, requires hotter temperatures. PLA, lower temperatures. We haven't gotten really into the details of the materials yet, but these are the basics on those. That's all. So basically, just make sure that if you set it for PLA, you select PLA as a filament. Same thing for PET. And then the rest is just, yeah, it's for that model and gives you an estimate. And an estimate meaning it's not going to be, oh, it says it's 51 minutes, but actually it finished in 30 minutes. No, it's going to be like, oh, it actually kind of sped up a little bit and it was able to finish it in 50 instead of 51. It's pretty accurate. All right, go to save. Okay, so from there, you have to physically put this on a drive. Now we have these little SD cards, and I've printed and glued them to these little tabs to make them slightly harder to lose. They're still very losable. We also have, if you don't have an SD reader on your computer, we have these little dongles here where you can plug in and then just plug into your USB. You just copy and drag it directly onto here. And that's pretty much it. Now that's the start for this. I will be making a separate video more specific to showing how to use the printers for recording later. So for here, I'm going to stop the recording and we're going to show you in the room how to work on these.